Hey there, guys. Name is Nick Cools, and I just decided that for this week's discussion, I'm going to talk about the coronavirus lockdown and the human rights violations of that lockdown. I'm not going to discuss whether or not the lockdown was necessary. I have my own opinions about that, but the extent of what was done and the continuation thereof is the subject of this conversation. So when we're talking about human rights, some of the most basic human rights are rights to persons, own abilities to be an independent entity, not subject to the extraneous measures of the state. When the coronavirus occurred and was publicized, it started off in a very strongly totalitarian nation, one with known human rights violations that is frequently in the international spotlight for its human rights violation, that nation being, of course, Communist China. Now, what happened next, from a human rights standpoint, is pretty unbelievable. Most of the rest of the world, especially the Western nations, chose to take on the exact same policies that a very strict dictatorial government had imposed upon its people. And they took those same measures carte blanche and applied those same strict protocol and measures, totalitarian measures, across their entire population. Now I think we can see the effects of that starting now with many of the riots going on around the world, which, although I think that they may in some respects be tied to other issues, I think that they are more a result of large masses of people being essentially under house arrest, with no recourse for dispute, no recourse for settling egregious concerns, and a lack of money and a lack of movement. These are the same exact concerns that would normally be protected by our rights, and this is one of the reasons that we have those rights, because it creates significant amounts of unrest and significant amounts of distrust and dissatisfaction from the populace. So what are some of those rights? Well, we have our own United States Constitution, and we also have our First Amendment, which includes, among other things, the freedom of religion, the freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of press, and so on. And then they're outlined in the amendments as you go through. Also, on an international level, the UN has a similar state of rights laid out in their articles of basic human rights, and Articles 12 and 13 are relevant because they are specifically dealing with what we're seeing with here. So those articles are as follows here, and I quote, Article 12, no one shall be subject to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, nor to attacks upon his honor and reputation. Every one has the right to protection of the law against such acts. And then furthermore, Article 13, Item 1 says everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. And then Article 13, Item 2 says everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his own country. Now, how were these rights handled during the COVID-19 crisis? Going back. Long story short, they were not. They were simply tossed out. And of course, as a result of this, you have a significant amount of distrust towards authority, towards the government, and the consequent uprising against the police and the enforcers of this oppression, if you will. So many of the Western nations violated the human rights of their populace, and the fallout of that is going to be far and away greater than the death toll of the virus itself. It will be as it's already seen significant increases in suicides, domestic violence, deaths from heart disease, deaths from cancer, deaths from other things that would normally be tackled by the medical system and by elective surgeries. Deaths from such things as now sectarian violence and assaults and things like that. I believe that it will get much, much worse unless the lockdowns are eased. That's again a different matter. But I believe that this is just one example of why these basic human rights are included within the Constitution of the United States and the Articles of the Human Rights, the UN. Thank you.